how does this particular disorder happen in the brain? How is the brain processing this?
Don't worry about AI, worry about humans working with AI.
Are you willing to learn new skills to stay relevant for the future job market? That's the challenge that people are going to struggle with.
Pastor J, I want to get a tattoo.
You really want
to me. Respond to me how you would respond to me.
The first question I'll ask is why?
Controversial taboo topics.
We get so consumed by church, we forget that we have to live the life of being a Christian outside of the Sunday.
Like you say,
services.
we think going to a service makes us a Christian.
Exactly.
Yeah. Right. So we are about to hear the second time Pastor J wanted to take a tattoo.
Would have been late last year and early this year.
Oh gosh.
Hope Unfiltered podcast with Pastor J and Ren.
Money is something we all deal with, but how many of us truly understand it? What if you could make better decisions with your money? Decisions that secure your future, protect your family, and bring you peace of mind. I'm Darren Jacobs, and I'm here to help you make sense of your dollars. Welcome to Dollars and Cents, the show that breaks down the financial world in ways that matter to you. No jargon, no confusion, just real conversations about money, your money. So join me every Wednesday at 10 a.m. on WESN for Dollars and Cents.
Knowing how to tell authentic is as easy as 1, 2, 3. Find it, match it, search it. Step 1. Find the style number on the tag. Step 2. Match the style number inside the jersey with the number on the tag. Step 3. Search it. A quick Google search of the style number will verify the jersey is authentic when the search results match the jersey being searched. Don't be fooled by counterfeit jerseys. Before you buy, remember to find it, match it, search it.
Fan Zone, 2 locations nationwide. Center City Mall, Chaguanas and Movietown, Port of Spain. Nationwide delivery available.
As always, we appreciate you starting your day with us. Let's get into this morning's first conversation.
Is the country's healthcare system more at risk more than ever?
Why it has remained unaddressed for so long.
Political parties get lots of cash, big cash from financiers, and then when they get that now, you can't account for it.
But it's really the specialist nurses who we are in a greater shortfall for.
We can tap into the resources and have them, at least form some mentorship programs.
Highlight our food systems, and which will attract persons from all over the world to come and experience something that actually supports the local economy.
We're lucky that we have a vibrant legal system that allows change to take place, and it's not that matters are just swept under the carpet and discrimination is allowed to be perpetrated.
A lot of people don't know that there were attempts to ban the carnival, suppress the carnival.
WESN.
Good morning and welcome to M Prime on WESN. I'm Naomi Macnish. So this morning we are speaking about Calypso History Month. October is Calypso History Month. It's a time to celebrate one of Trinidad and Tobago's greatest cultural treasures and the voice that has chronicled our nation's story. From Sparrow to Stalin, Shadow to Rudder, Calypso has long reflected our joys, struggles, and triumphs. But as we honor the legends and legacy, there is also a growing concern: can Calypso survive in today's fast changing world of digital music and short attention spans. Joining us this morning to talk about the significance of this year's celebrations and what's being done to preserve and modernize the art form is the PRO for TUCO, Mr. Randall Donowa. Good morning, Randall. Welcome to Prime.
Good morning, Naomi. How are you?
Good. How are you this morning?
I'm good.
So, Calypso, as we know, Calypso has been described as the heartbeat of the nation. This is something that many people have said when describing Calypso or when you're speaking Calypso in Trinidad and Tobago. How does TUCO plan to bring that idea to life through this month's events celebrating Calypso History Month?
Right, yeah. So as we know, the calendar, the cultural calendar of our society, Calypso History Month, is celebrated in October of every year. And as such, TUCO, being the flagship organization and represents Calypsonians, we launched our Calypso History Month celebrations, which would have started in the 1st of October. However, it must be noted that although Calypso History Month is the 1st of October, certain activities started in September and it ends straight down to November. So it is not just defined to a month, but more it's a space, right? It's a celebration in terms of personal calendars. Also, TUCO would be involved. Whereas TUCO would have our own calendar events, other Calypsonians as well as entertainers would also have their events as well, which commemorates Calypso History Month. So in essence, our theme this year, of course, I know I'm probably jumping, but I would stop there in terms of the initial question.
That's okay. I wanted to ask, for you personally, what does Calypso History Month mean?
Well, Calypso History Month really means celebrating our ancestral cultural heritage, right? Of course, Calypso, the historics of Calypso started way back in over 100 years ago, when the stories of the slave masters or the slaves using chant to really express themselves, and this is what blended into our Calypso forum, where our stories are told. Calypso is about storytelling. And because Calypso is about storytelling, to me, right, it also means that I am a storyteller, right? And I can now use my storytelling, right, to inspire others. Of course, via different genres of Calypso, different subsets of Calypso, rather. Needing like this social commentary, political commentary, humorous, vintage. So Calypso is not just defined by one particular generation or one particular group, right? But to me, it's really global.
Yeah. So now we can get into the theme for this year. When it comes to Calypso History Month, I saw Calypso Unleashed. Is that it?
Yes, Calypso Unleashed, Boundless Harmonies, and every year we would coin different themes for Calypso History Month that will transcend to straight through the month to Carnival. So this year, Calypso Unleashed, Boundless Harmonies, it basically captures the enduring power of Calypso to break barriers, to unify forces, and inspire communities. So it's really about unification. Last year's theme was Calypso Globalization, where whereas yes, Calypso is global, but taking it further by, last year we took Calypso again, well, as an organization to the Apollo, right? So that was a great achievement, as well as we took Calypso to various jurisdictions or various countries in the diaspora. The last being Canada at the Trinbago Toronto Festival, where TUCO played an important role in that festival, which took place last month, as well as in New York and other areas in which Calypso and storytelling, of course, is its channel to be global.
Yeah. Is Tuco looking to any digital transformation possibly in terms of getting Calypso out there a lot more, especially to the younger generation? For example, to YouTube having certain archives featured on YouTube and.
But to ourselves, we have launched our YouTube channel sometime back in 2023, whereby we are attempting to collate on Calypsos into one space. So Tuco Calypso, that's YouTube channel. However, obviously more needs to be done in terms of archiving. I mean, I know there have been various groups who have been involved in archiving personally, right? And however, Tuco's organization through our Carnival Museum, because there's also a Trinidad National Calypso Museum, which through one of our general council members, Mark Morris Edwards, Mark Morris, right? He is really tasked with that one, preserving the Calypso archives as well as attempting to digitize. So there's something that is taking our fullest attention, and it is hoped that at least the archives from then straight to now is digitized. I mean, because at the end of the day, we are in a space where we no longer keep records, meaning that, when I say records, physical records like CDs, etc. And also we have Calypsonians as well. I mean, a large section of Calypsonians do have their Calypso digitized in terms of you can find certain Calypsos on YouTube, you can find their contributions, etc. So other Calypsonians personally, they have started. I mean, you've seen certain Calypsos now on digital platforms such as YouTube, not only YouTube but iTunes and
because there's
Spotify and those things.
Right. Yeah. That was one of the things that I thought about. If you have access to various Calypso songs and artists and stuff on these.
So I've seen personally Calypsos on those platforms, particularly iTunes, Spotify. Those two platforms are quite popular platforms. I mean, along with, of course, YouTube, Amazon Music. So I've already seen Calypso progress there.
Right. So in terms of the calendar of events for this month, I know you mentioned activities or events would have started in September. Can you tell us what is still to come, what we can expect following through the rest
No
of
problem. I mean, of course, to go through the Educational and Research Unit, that is Gary Cordner, he's the Education Officer. He would have, through the organization, we would have launched a one-day music workshop, which was September 20th. I mean, we launched officially our Thanksgiving service, which was on the first just weekend gone. The South Zone had a Curry Q project where you had Curry Q and Calypso. So that was really good. As well as there was also a performance with Gary Cordner and Hamadullah and Johnny King. That was on Saturday. But moving forward this week, Tobago Zone launched their Carnival History Month tomorrow. That's Tuesday the 7th at 10 a.m. at the Scarborough Public Library in Scarborough. So the Tobago Zone doing their launch of Calypso History Month, which of course is open to the public. Tuco North Zone on Sunday the 12th, they're having an annual bus ride, the Calypso type bus ride to Clifton Hill. It starts at 9 o'clock. They're also doing a primary and secondary school workshop, Calypso workshop, from 9 a.m. to 12 noon at the City Hall Auditorium, Port of Spain. Also, South Zone as well is doing a children's calypso workshop, which is later in the month on the 24th. Then we have E-Zone. The E-Zone is also doing an event. It's a river line and bring your CD and come, so they're encouraging persons in the fraternity to come to line and also to bring their song so that they can perform, right? And there are a few calypso students workshop throughout the country by the various zones, the South Zone, the North Zone. So they are doing all those workshops. And also, we have also partnered as well with the Shorty 25th Remembrance project, which is going to take place on the 18th of October at the Black Man's Ranch in Paparo. So there are a few mentorship workshops that are taking place. The Health is Wealth challenge. The Health is Wealth challenge is really it is really put forth by the Welfare Department and the Welfare Officer, Ms. Kurinashi. This is where students are encouraged to submit a creative video and chorus on what health is wealth means to them, as well as doing things such as walking, exercising, etc.
Yes.
So it's about balancing, balancing your level of fitness. And then, to end the Calypso Month celebration in November, on the 14th of November, we have the Extemporama event at the Lions Cultural Club at 7 p.m. That's a big extempo showcase, where you get to laugh your heads off, right, as the saying goes. So that's a big staple event. And of course, tickets are available at Tuco's offices at number 5 Rosalina Street, Woodbrook, for that event, as well as Cleves, Crosby's. So that is a very good event to attend. I believe the cost is $150. So that is something that is one of our staple ending events for Calypso Shiban, which is 14th of November. Extemporama, 7 p.m. at the Lions Club Cultural Center.
People can find this calendar listing. Where can they find it?
Yeah, so the calendar can be found on Tuco's social media pages. So we have them pinned on Facebook, Tuco's Facebook page, as well as our Instagram page as well. And then you will see constant updates that are being shared. So that's Tuco Trinidad and Tobago on Facebook, and Tuco Official on Instagram.
Right. From what you called, Mr. Dono, what are you most excited about? Which event are you most excited about?
I usually attend most of the events, but I'm most very excited about the school tours. Getting, because when you go to the school tours, you won't believe. Yes, you will think that the students are not aware, but they're fully aware of clips. So sometimes they even compose their own songs on the spot, and it really shows a bigger picture in terms of their appreciation for the art form. Once the art form is brought to them, they no longer see it as a long time thing, but they also see it as something that they can also enhance their composing skills as well. So I'm looking forward to the school tours, most importantly.
Do you all focus on getting the students to understand that they are the ones, or they will be the ones responsible for carrying on this art form in future generations? And do you all get a positive response when?
Of course. The good thing about a lot of the schools that we attend is that they also have calypso competitions when it comes to carnival time. So sometimes you will find that even their participants, meaning the persons who participate in the calypso competitions, they are the ones as well who would participate in the workshop. So it's really a time of excitement. Some schools, you find that the entire school will participate in their auditorium. So really it's driving across history as well as driving across the future in terms of how can they be part of this ever evolving, ever changing art form.
At the end of all your celebrations, you said in November 14th, I believe, is the last event. How are you all carrying this through into Carnival 2026?
Well, Carnival 2026 preparation has already started. I mean, it's a short season. Carnival is in early February.
Yeah.
So really and truly, it's the work doesn't end there. I mean, in November, we are starting auditions for tents. You know, Tupu has 4 established tents in the country, being our flagship tent being the Dynasty. Kaiser Dynasty, which was formerly Kaiser House. So really and truly, we are preparing for a short season as well as a hectic season. So the work doesn't end.
Yeah, awesome. Well, that I believe we can wrap there. Thank you, Mr. Donovan, for joining me on the program this morning and talking about Calypso History Month and what we can expect. The season itself sounds like it's going to be a lot. But it sounds exciting. It sounds really, really exciting.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, so thank you so much.
Okay, no problem. Okay. Enjoy the rest of your day.
You too. Take care. Bye.
All right, so we are going to take a quick break. When we come back, I will be joined by Dr. Shane Mohammed. We're having a quick pre-budget conversation. Talking about some things that we've been seeing in the news recently and what we can expect pre-budget for Trinidad and Tobago. So stay with us, we'll be right back.
Low energy? Heart concerns? Migraines slowing you down? It's time to take control of your health. Join Wellness Unlocked, the series that brings expert advice and real solutions for a healthier you. In our latest episode, learn how Jameson CoQ10 can help support heart health, boost energy, and even reduce migraines. Get the science, the stories, and the steps to power up your health with CoQ10. Don't miss Wellness Unlocked. Watch now on WESN and start your wellness journey today.
SM Group International Limited, your solutions partner for the latest innovations, brands, and competent staff to meet your needs. We provide products and services in the following divisions: executive services, event rental and services, power and heavy equipment, construction and property management, food and beverage, aggregate and sales and distribution. Check out more on our products and services at www.smgrouptt.com. Contact us at 221-7445 or email at info@smgrouptt.com. We are SM Group International, your solutions partner.
Money is something we all deal with, but how many of us truly understand it? What if you could make better decisions with your money? Decisions that secure your future, protect your family, and bring you peace of mind. I'm Darren Jacobs, and I'm here to help you make sense of your dollars. Welcome to Dollars and Cents, the show that breaks down the financial world in ways that matter to you. No jargon, no confusion, just real conversations about money, your money. So join me every Wednesday at 10 a.m. on WESN for Dollars and Cents.
You are watching Strictly Legal on WESN Content Capital. Just give an overview of what exactly is that split arrangement.
Now you don't need to register nothing. You don't need. We can do that another time. But then it becomes a hit, and then everybody starts to want to claim.
The laws that predate many of the independent countries' constitutions are going to be those colonial laws.
We know there are an infinite amount of circumstances that would lead to a murder.
I have a great idea and I have a great concept, but until it's actually expressed, it does not become intellectual property.
Accomplishments or targets of a forensic accountant is to quantify what may have been lost.
We believe we defend criminals and we manipulated the law and we exploited the system.
A responsible journalist will reach out to the person who they have the information on for a comment.
Maybe he landed here totally by coincidence. But if by chance he's admiring your fresh coat of Benjamin Moore soft sky blue, well, that's a pretty high compliment. Coming from an expert.
Welcome back to AM Prime this morning. So, as the country anticipates the upcoming national budget, questions are mounting about the real state of Trinidad and Tobago's economy and the direction in which we're heading. Former Finance Minister Winston Dukran recently described the nation as being caught in a disequilibrium trap where economic systems are out of sync. Then economist Dr. Indira Sajawan has also argued that the economy is functioning below its potential and needs a major reset in priorities and planning. So this morning we want to unpack what all of this really means for the average citizen beyond, fiscal jargon and numbers, and what kind of transformation does Trinidad and Tobago truly need at this stage of its development. Joining me on the program this morning is political analyst Dr. Shane Mohammed. He will touch and speak about all of these issues and, simplify it for us. Good morning, Dr. Shane. Welcome to AM Prime.
Good morning. Thank you so very much for having me.
Yeah.
I myself was trying my best to get some words in which we could simplify all of the technical aspects of the economics. Because remember, our conversation about me not being an economist is very critical to the discussion. That doesn't mean, though, that economics does not directly affect our social fabric and does not affect how we do business. It has a lot to do with our purchasing power. And what is critical for us in terms of average citizens having more money in our pockets, more disposable income, as we like to say, in order to carry out our daily business. And that in itself is very much directly linked to a country's wealth, a government's ability to implement certain measures, certain policies, programs, adopt certain measures that will not only provide robustness and resilience from an economic perspective, national governance economic perspective, but that there's a fair amount of good trickle-down effect into the society. And therefore, when a country... So one of the most important things is that when a country is in prosperity from a national and from an economic perspective, that economic prosperity has in some form or in some way or some form must have a trickle-down effect and must be felt by its citizens, because its citizens are major players and key stakeholders in the state apparatus, in this relationship of state economics. The other part of it is that the government has a responsibility to ensure that where an economy is not performing the way it ought to perform, is not doing well the way it ought to do, not just only because of domestic issues, but geo-economic and geopolitical shocks, different things that are happening, characteristics, components, facets that are happening outside of one's control, that there be a level of resilience within a state to be able to meander those shocks and ensure the welfare of citizens with the littlest or the easiest and of shocks of the ability to withstand what is facing.
Right. So let's say when people say, or when you hear that Trinidad and Tobago's real problem is not an economic problem, it's a systemic problem. Is this what you'd refer to when saying something like this? It's not the system itself is what needs fixing or is what needs to be addressed.
So that's more like a secular and a structural perspective that Mr. Dukran speaks about, where there are so in terms of secular equilibrium, that would mean that there are it depends on a nation's development stage, where it is in terms of its development, in terms of its output, in terms of its input. Does a nation have enough savings in its basket to be able to move it forward, and for how long? Because savings only last for so long.
Yeah.
Do we have enough savings in our treasury in order to invest in things that are lucrative to the long-term development of its people and its nation? Because at the end of the day, the people is at the center of all of the economics, and how we live, how we are capable or able to live going forward is very important, and one of the major concerns, or should be one of the major concerns for our government. Now, the next part of it is he talks about structural equilibrium, and that's where an economy's structure is dependent on shifts in demand and supply, and that can alter the ability of a country to meet its balance of payments. Payments as it pertains to how much money it receives, how much money it has to spend, who are its quote-unquote debtors, but really and truly the word debtors tend to scare people, but who are its vendors that needs to be paid, right? Because we have to be able to, when we make, so it's like we make money, we all work, we get money, and then we have to measure how much money we have or we receive per month in order to repay our bank loan, whether it is our mortgages, our car payments, purchase groceries, send children to school, purchase books daily, pay our bills, electricity, whatever. It's the same thing. If the issue is that we are maybe spending above our means, or our income is not one that generate our income is insufficient to generate the lifestyles that we want, then there are certain structural adjustments we need to make to our personal lives in order to balance off or not hit rock bottom. Now, ironically, Dutch disease is very much an important aspect of our conversation that Dr. Sajiwan has put forward, and that is that because a country has so much natural resource capacity, and there's so much wealth in its natural resources, they tend to shy away from all other sectors that contribute to economic growth and development, and they just simply rely on that one natural resource sector. And unfortunately, that's where we are in Trinidad and Tobago, and therefore we now need to figure out how do we move forward. Now, there are options. There are several options available to Trinidad and Tobago, which we will get into. And I think that this is one time where we have to also understand, and I'm not about to play politics, but we have to remember that the politics, I always tell people that there's economics. Every year, I argue the point to the media, I argue the point to reporters when they ask me what I think. And I always have to argue the point that we must never forget that we talk about socio-political matters, we talk about socio-economic matters, and I've talked about the politics of the economics. And we have to take into consideration that in a country like Trinidad and Tobago, where we are very hyper-political, everything we talk about in this country is, it centers around the politics. Whether we like or we don't like, the fact of the matter is what we expect, right, So let's dissect that for a quick second. It's not a matter of who we like and who we don't like, who we voted for and who we didn't vote for. It's not a matter of personalities. It's a matter of about positioning, and strategic and tactful positioning is very critical, because we don't live. Yes, we live on an island, but when we don't live on an island that does not interact with the outside world, and therefore we have to take into consideration that every single nation in the world, developed, semi-developed, developing, whether it is in the more developing category, the less developing category, or underdeveloping, every single country in the world is fighting for a space in that very large table. And there are only so many spaces available before you sit outside or just behind those that are seated at the table and you wait your turn. Where do you as a nation want to be in that lineup? And that is also very important to strategic positioning in the geoeconomics and geopolitics. But let's step back as well for a quick second. The idea of the Dutch disease is very relevant. And why is it very relevant? It's because we have to make sure that in how we do business and how we look forward to the future, that we are resilient, we are innovative, we are creative, we are adopting measures by understanding where we are and what we have in our hand, right? And what we are going to do with that based on partnerships, investors, other states, reliance on other states, as well as how are we going, what is in front of us that we can utilize to drive economic growth and development. And that is where the word diversification comes into play. And the former administration did not diversify in the way it ought to have diversified. And
Dr. Mohammed, before we move on there, can we just, for those of us that don't know Dutch disease, or what does that mean, can you just tell us, just simplify that?
So Dutch disease is simply the recognition that a country has extensive natural resources.
Right.
And for many years, when you've discovered your natural resources and what they are and what are its capabilities, you get excited. There's an excitement of the discovery of all of this natural resource, that there is now a sector that is built around that natural resource. And those natural resources, the sectors that are built around that natural resource, or those natural resources, tend to be the be-all and end-all of your economic growth and development. Not understanding that there are other factors that one must not. A state is, when a state gets to the point where it's suffering from the Dutch effect, it has to make, one, it is important to recognize the Dutch effect that is coming into play, and two, how much of a state's reliance can really be invested in this one sector before there's a, oh my God, we can't do this for much longer anymore. Now, Trinidad and Tobagonians will say, well, we've been hearing about we can't rely on oil and gas since Mr. Manning was Prime Minister. And therefore, in those years to now, almost 20 years or more, that we are still relying on upstream and downstream from the oil and gas sector. And now we are at the point where we are just simply relying on more natural gas outputs than we are relying on oil. And when we look around, we are seeing countries like Guyana, who has discovered oil, and Suriname, who has discovered oil, growing at more rapid rates than Trinidad and Tobago. And they are enjoying the fruits of their labor and the fruits of their natural resources. 50 years after Trinidad and Tobago, and they're developing their country at a rapid stage. Now, there's always that who is new players in that sector and who are old players in that sector, and what is the advantage to, or disadvantage to new players and old players. So that even there are nations that are heavily, they are rich in natural resources. But the point is, what they've done is they recognize the worth and the value of their natural resources, but they've not become heavily reliant only on their natural resources. So for example, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, the United Arab Emirates, Dubai, and all of the Emirati states, as we know it, were desert land. They were untouched beachfront in some instances because of the geographic location. They were just not, they were just simply just sand. And the recognition of its leaders that yes, we are rich, absolutely rich, highly rich in oil and gas, top producers in oil and gas. Does that mean that oil and gas would be our be-all and end-all? So what did they do? They entered into construction, they went into finance, they went into tourism, and 30 years after, we have huge metropolis. Everybody wants to go to Dubai. Everyone wants to go to Abu Dhabi. Everybody wants to go to different, one of the Emirates at the very least, of the 7 that exist. The same is happening now in Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia is into major construction. They're into major aspects of tourism outside of just Hajj and the influx of Muslims that go to Saudi Arabia for pilgrimage and whatnot. They're getting involved in now looking at other options to drawing people to different parts of Saudi Arabia, and building in what was once desert land. And their visions to build, large metropolis for investment in finance and different sectors, in order to keep its economy resilient. You could look at Bangladesh, could look at India, could look at China. There are levels of natural resources that exist there, and whether those natural resources exist in human capacity or in things that come out of the earth. The fact is, they are not just simply relying on just one sector. And I think, unfortunately, Trinidad and Tobago has had great leaders, but those great leaders somehow fell short in their great vision to think about us down the road 30, 40 years.
Yeah. Do you think we can counteract the effects of Dutch disease without, let's say, hampering or disrupting the energy sector? Is that something that? Yeah.
Yes. See, the thing about it is, we've gotten accustomed to operating in silos. And the world does not operate in silo. Nobody can operate in a silo. The most powerful nations in the world understand that there's a heavy reliance and a need for each other, whether it is for military support, whether it is for economic support, financial support. Remember, in the world system, we don't just have government to government. In the political science world, in the international relations world, we talk about the state apparatus. We call them state actors. We call them actors. But then there is the multinational corporations that are not necessarily attached directly to the government of a nation. And we call them non-state actors. So there's an interplay that is happening between state and non-state actors across the globe. And as a result of that, that's how we do business. So we do business state to state. We do state to multinational. We do multinational to multinational. We do it to international organization to state and that sort of thing. Now, the short answer of the question is that no, there's no need to disrupt, and we should not be disrupting what exists in terms of our energy sector. What we should seek to do is rebuild, reposition, and restructure our energy sector so it becomes more robust, so that it becomes more competitive so that there's competitive advantage. We take into consideration what the business model is that exists for our in energy sector, especially ones that we own. So for example, state-owned energy sector cannot be run like a public sector entity. There must be a business model involved. There must be business model innovation involved. There must be a corporate governance perspective, private sector approach to how we run the most critical aspects of our state apparatus. So the way we look at Angostura, the way we look at First Citizens Bank, the way we look at all of our energy the companies that we own, so the National Gas Company, the Trinidad Petroleum Holdings Limited, Caribbean Airlines is a critical one. Those are aspects, those are things that can generate a lot of revenue for us out from a state level. NFM is very critical. That's part of it. There was also a vision so that Trinidad and Tobago at some point in time would also become a financial hub. It seems as though we are a little bit stuck on how do we become a financial hub, because we have the International Financial Center, which is an organization that is supposed to position us, he would suppose, to position us as a space where people can put their money, but we have not looked at that as one option to revenue generation as an aspect of diversification. We've spoken ad nauseum about a maritime sector. Last year, when there were severe hurricanes coming to Trinidad and coming to the region, Beryl, I believe, when Beryl was coming to Trinidad, there was an influx of yachties that were heading south. And I remember very clearly that Colin Burt, as the Minister of Finance, was intrigued because he posted it on what was formerly Twitter, now X, showing how many yachties were sailing towards Trinidad because Trinidad was outside of the hurricane belt and it provided a shelter to those persons. So here was the argument, though. Don't be intrigued by a one-off of all of these yachties. And that was an argument that even I got on board with. You shouldn't be excited. I found it a slap in our face that you were excited as a Minister of Finance by all of these yachties that were quickly sailing down to Trinidad to take up a space to be protected from the winds and the waves of a major hurricane. But that shouldn't be a one-off. That should be something that is a norm. There's no reason why, because we are outside of the hurricane belt, because there's diverse waters here, because there is both Trinidad and Tobago, right? There is down the islands as well. That we have the Maritime Institute in terms of those persons who we are training to be able to fix boats, regardless of what, whichever level. We have skill sets in that regard, marine engineers and marine mechanics. Those things are all part of a diversification trust that can complement the energy sector. And that is where we should have investments, major investments. Another major thing that we should be doing is because Chaguaramas is so sheltered, because Chaguaramas provides a lot of inlets where there's not much worry about a lot of wave movement and that sort of thing. We can expand, I should say, in a very macro lucrative way, our ability to fix ships. So when we put the ferries, the fast ferries and all that on dry dock, we don't send them out of Trinidad and Tobago to be fixed. They are fixed right here. They are maintained here. There are personnel here and experts right here that can take the ferry, the vessel out of the water onto dry docking and do the necessary repairs that is needed, and then put it back down into the water and send it into service. That's another sector. Agriculture is very critical. We were, and I blame Mr. Manning for this, unfortunately, we are afraid of competition. And at the time that Mr. Manning took this very ad hoc decision, rather than take a position, or and I am left to assume, right? So, and I try my best to be stay on the academic level, but from a realistic perspective, and not edge into the political. And it's very difficult now because decisions, political decisions, not necessarily good political decisions. What I would say is ad hoc political decisions, reactive, keyword, reactive political decisions, have caused us to become into this Dutch disease that Dr. Sajuan talks about, which is when one of the one argument is that currently 1975 Limited was not producing at its highest potential. One, it was a drain on the economy. Two, persons were not working the way they ought to have worked. Three, we had stiff competition from outside markets, specifically as it pertains to the use of honey, the use of corn syrup, and the use of beetroot at that point in time to supplement the use of sugar. And for a brief period, very brief period, 2 years max, I think, maybe if we want to push it 5 years, but I know it was a very short period of time, there was competition from Europe. But the competition and the exploration and the experimentation with alternatives to sugar resulted in the understanding that it was unsustainable. And therefore, the world today relies on sugar from India, from Guyana, from wherever. And therefore, Trinidad and Tobago prematurely instead of restructure. We don't like to restructure. We don't like to downsize for the purposes of, you sometimes you have to, you look at you examine the environment. When you examine the environment, it tells you whether or not you should downsize.
Yeah.
Reserve, put into storage sometimes, but downsize in order to expand and be able to be resilient like that in order to meet demands and supplies. Or where you have, contracting of certain economies as a result of X, you look to other markets in order to sustain that. So one of those things that the cyclical equilibrium that Mr. Dupran would have spoken about is exactly that. Sometimes a recession in one country causes its demand and supply a need for one nation to stop and think about how much it's importing and how much it's exporting in order to survive its recessional period. And that may impact another country that is a supplier.
Yes.
Therefore, that nation must be able to have more than one options in that market or in that field so that it balances it off. So if we have, let's just say for argument's sake, again, me using common sense and business knowledge, not economics, let's just say you have 50% of your exports going to Europe. And then Europe has suddenly decided that it's going to experiment with corn and corn syrup and honey and et cetera, and your exports of that 50% that is sent to Europe, 30% is now it's now be reduced by 30%. You have to take that 30% and decide whether I can, for a short period of time, use it in my domestic market and give a blight to my citizens. And more means less in terms of the more there is, the less it costs, and therefore they enjoy that, or put it into other markets and develop relationships there. I think that was where the thinking, and there's no evidence, there's no dialoguing, no expert has come out and say, well, we did that, we tried that, it didn't work. There should be a documentation to tell us that, right? Or an explanation of some sort. So the point is this: we have had sugar, and we threw it away, and that was one of sugar today is gold, and we as a nation should not, with all of these lands that we have that is given away to farmers and whatnot, giving our assets to our citizens is not a bad thing, but we have to take into consideration that a very good, rich land that is good for agriculture is now given away, and then how is it going to be used?
Yeah.
So I still, however, am of the firm belief that there's nothing that prevents us from reassessing, reigniting, and at a private level, a private sector level, have a reinvestment in sugar, utilizing modern technology, modern agricultural processes, modern processing systems, and that sort of thing. We've established a really good relationship with India, and if India is willing to expand itself and its global reach, then I think that is one of the areas in which we should look at. So the next step for Trinidad and Tobago is to really and truly position itself where we have oil and gas, and we build oil and gas, but we also build other things. So we build creatives, we build manufacturing, we build processing, we build agriculture, and we look at every single aspect of agriculture, from cocoa and coffee, and I still stand by sugar. I believe, because you see, currently 1975 Limited, and this is where Mr. Manning and the PNM got it wrong. Currently 1975 Limited was just not only sugarcane. It was undulating lands in tableland, in orchards of orange and grapefruit and Portugals and you name it, as well as large amounts of cattle and buffalo and that sort of thing. So the model and the example exists in Trinidad and Tobago, where we can exist and operate in a multi-sectoral economy, where we can have a diverse amount of sectors by which we are flourishing.
Yes, I also think our cocoa industry, we can be a lot
bigger. It's one of the richest in the world, right? It's one of the highest grades of cocoa in the world, and we really and truly, and that is why I think there's a lot of expectation on the shoulders of the current Prime Minister, because one of the things I will say is the kind of mandate that she has received is very rare, especially for Trinidad and Tobago. We have had only one Prime Minister prior to her who was able to win elections with constitutional majorities that allowed for systems reset and systematic changes. And she has that opportunity for a second time. First, second time with even Mr. Manning did not get that, but a second time with a constitutional majority to make systematic changes and give us a very hard reset to how we do things. And the country has to realize that when we've floated down this river for so long with the same vessel, and that vessel has lost its robustness, that vessel has become rusted, that vessel has lost its oomph. We can't continue down the river with the vessel going as it is. So at some point in time, the vessel is going to shut down. It may end up with a leak. It will probably not be able to be fixed, and then the vessel will start to sink. And sooner rather than later, everybody in the vessel will dead, unless somebody comes to rescue. But the rescuing aspect is rescue and then what? We can't change the vessel. We have to now find ways while the vessel is moving to work on it in order to, whether it means stopping at a port and expanding. Because then, remember, as I used in the analogy of the river, people could come off the vessel at different ports and choose not to get back on, and we've seen that as well. There are many people in Trinidad and Tobago who wish Trinidad and Tobago very well, but and they want the best for Trinidad and Tobago, but Trinidad and Tobago as a home state just couldn't do it for them in the aspiration of their goals, realization of their goals, and therefore they've chosen to leave. And then when we lose those brains, that brain and that human capacity, it's very difficult to get it back. Because in all of, and another example of that is, of all the Guyanese that has departed from Guyana's mainland, they've gone to North America, they've gone to New York, they've gone to Canada, they've gone to England, blah, blah, blah. They're really excited and very proud Guyanese people for the prosperity of their nation, the growth and development of their nation. Only last night, President Irfan Ali, opened the bridge that traverses the Demerara River. That's a remarkable, shift and a remarkable achievement, a developmental achievement for the government and the people of Guyana. That 20 years ago, it was only just a dream. Here it is now a reality, and there's going to be more happening in the Guyanese mainland, and there's going to be more development that we will see there. But the fact remains is that those who left and established lives out there, struggled and made a life of themselves and realized their dreams and passed it on to second and third generations, are not necessarily going to come back. They're going to come back and visit, yes. They're going to come back and enjoy, that sense of pride and patriotism, because that's their Guyana. We want to restore the same here. And the people that we lose from Trinidad and Tobago in the years gone by, in the 1980s, and when there was such a huge outflux, movement of people out of Trinidad and Tobago, they have not returned. Their children have not returned. My cousins who were born outside of Trinidad and Tobago have not returned to Trinidad and Tobago. Don't see the need to return to Trinidad. Yes, they Trinidad and Tobago, they love Trinidad and Tobago, or food or cuisine or culture, whatever. But the bottom line is, life is out there and they're not going to come back. So we have to take that into consideration as part of our economics, because that's a socio-economic part of our framework. So the bottom line is, we can't continue doing business as usual. And we in the expectation of this budget, yes, people are talking about, well, today should have been budget days, the first one in October, blah blah blah. We don't like to do research. Unfortunately, people don't like to do research, they don't like to read, they don't like to understand, and they just like to take what they see. Like a lot of people, I tell all of my students, I tell my parents, sometimes you listen to something and you see a TikTok video, created by AI, but it's not accurate. The information is not accurate. It's not accurate in any form, and you use that and it's not true. And they're always, we have to also take into consideration the conversation. There are people who just simply don't want to see progress. They complain about change, lack of. They complain about progress, the lack of. They complain about who is doing wrongly. But when the system has an opportunity to shift by virtue of an election, they still resist the change. And we can't afford to be, if Trinidad and Tobago continues to resist, and there are elements of the society that continue to resist the movement and the redirecting of the nation from a structural perspective, from an economic perspective, from a systems perspective, from a public sector reform perspective, from a cultural shift perspective. It's like a business. If businesses don't take on some form of innovation, some form of creativity, some form of reflective practice, some form of self-analysis and reassessment, there are several things that are going to happen. One, it will find itself having less and less competitive advantage. It's going to find its human resource capacity is going to start diminishing. How its business partners and its stakeholders are going to move to its next best competition. Your doors of the business is going to become a revolving door. As quick as you hire, people are going to leave. And then if you continue doing the things the same way and not understanding and keep wondering why, blaming staff and not doing self-reflection and looking at yourself and how you do things from a management perspective, then your business is going to collapse, right? And go into receivership or bankruptcy or whatever the case may be. It's the same thing for a state. A country is also a business. And in order for that country, that is also a business, to have revenues, they need to also always be assessing the way they do things and how they position themselves and who they position themselves and what is the best way to have an advantageous position out there, because out there is where a lot of things are happening and where states are racing ahead of each other to get to that space of prosperity, to afford its citizens a level of wealth and a future that provides them with the realization of their dreams and aspirations without them having to go to another country.
Yeah.
So, that's where we are.
Yeah. We have a comment. I don't know if you want to respond to it, Dr. Mohammed.
Sure.
But it reads, we can correct the loophole in the trickle-down expectation. Long story short, we can have a world with no less fortunate. Yes, it will be addressing a problem that was neglected for hundreds of years.
Michael Samuel is 100%. I'm 100% in agreement with him. And that's the kind of conversations that I welcome, that persons understand that we can change the way we do things. And, we can the only way to do it is by facing the problems head on. Now, I did resilience I did an international lecture 2 Fridays ago on resilience in leadership, and specifically in political leadership, because that's the leadership that we talk about in terms of states, right? And I was at the international political I was in a forum hosted by the International Political Science Association, and having resilience is not just being able to pick up oneself, dust oneself off and go again. It's about picking oneself up, dusting themselves off, but also taking note of its environment, adapting, being adaptive, understanding, like Mr. Samuel spoke about, the problems, the issues, and what those issues and problems are that needs to be systematically addressed. Sometimes it involves looking deep within yourself and understanding, what do I need to do in order to make things better? So the system is flawed. We have a government with a constitutional majority. That constitutional majority cannot be wasted. It must be utilized. And that must bring about some serious changes in how we do things and what we do and where we go from there. And that may also include small changes. So, for example, and this is a controversial one, there's a lot of discomfort from supporters of the UNC, from non-supporters of the UNC, from those who despise the UNC, about what has happened with regard to CPEP and URP and these programs that were created for social support. Keyword, URP and CPEP were created for social support. That does not mean, and the word social support in itself means that it was not meant to become an institutionalized thing. It was meant to allow persons to get a job while developing skill sets, especially from those who are non-skilled, and then positioning them with skill sets, and hopefully, well, that's where another flaw is, with some level of certification, that so that they can move on beyond that, right?
Yeah.
And when things become institutionalized, then people become stagnated, and then they lose that dream, and they live by making ends meet. I don't know who, I don't know where, and I don't believe that there's anybody that we can have a conversation with that wants to live a life 40 years, 50 years, just simply making ends meet.
Yeah.
Every single person who struggled and understands what it is to not have and what it is to be in the realm of poverty, whether it means that realm of poverty, they understand it to be that they've been working all of their life to become able to find a degree, to attain a degree, to 1 degree, 2 degrees, 3 degrees. They've been working, they understand what it is that to be up I am speaking to you at 7:22 a.m. on a Monday morning, but how many people have been up since 3 o'clock, ensuring that their children had somebody to take them to school, but also going out there to work, whether it is, whatever that job may be. But it is to make ends meet so that their generation after them, their children or grandchildren or whoever, does not have the same life that they've had. Now, that's all within the domestic aspirations and goal attainment of the number one stakeholders within a state, which is its citizens. And therefore, I am saying that, and the theory says it, and I tend to not always rely on strictly theory because there are theories that I disagree with, but the theory and the practice of where we are is that in order for us, when we look at our budget, yes, we're looking at how much money we're spending and how much money we're earning, where we're spending it, who we're spending it, who has access to what, when, how, why, how things are functioning now, how do we conduct business? Is that conduct of our business the right way to conduct our business? Have we been wasting funds when we could develop something into a more structured, long-term, more progressive, less dependent? We've also created in Trinidad and Tobago, outside of the Dutch disease, from an economic perspective, from a social perspective, we've created a severe dependency syndrome on the state. And that has been a discussion when I was doing my undergrad studies and my master's in government. That dependency on state is not ever a good thing. We must acknowledge that there's going to be certain levels of the society that are going to rely on the state. Rely, not depend.
So
rely on the state.
We could show this. Mr. Samuel also commented, he said governments should take over housing, construct affordable, readily available housing units, have a system for housing transactions, much more solutions. I think. So
that let's take that for example, right? I want to keep the comment up so I could, it would guide my thoughts. More than just taking over housing, right? One of the things we have to be very careful about is that taking over housing means that there's going to be an over-dependence on the government for housing. But what there needs to be are more public-private partnerships in housing development. So there could be three things happening here, right? On the one hand, you have private developers, but that private development must be subjected to, and I have no apologies. There are people who are going to say, but Shane, you're pushing us into a dictatorship. No. I believe that we must understand ourselves. Trinidad and Tobago, unfortunately, has a culture whereby we need to be always regulated. The saying by our parents and grandparents that you give a man an inch and he'll take a mile is very relevant to our cultural behaviors. We've not learned from our past. We don't seem to want to learn going forward. And therefore, take for example, the Prime Minister and the government of Trinidad and Tobago recognize that the demerits point system implemented for road safety, road trafficking, whatever you want to call that, was unfair to drivers, was a burden, it was onerous, it was burdensome, it was prejudicial. People make mistakes, and therefore they opted to get rid of it. President of Trinidad and Tobago spoke about the need for road safety, road conditionalities have affected many of us. I am deathly afraid of the highway because of one accident that almost killed me, and therefore I have that paranoia and that PTSD from experiencing that accident has never left me. And there's no amount of therapy that one can go through to come out of that fear of the road and some of these drivers out there that are very inconsiderate. So while we figure out what's next, they remove the demerits point system. And suddenly people started to go mad, driving like crazy people. You know, they never said that the speed limit was not implemented and was not still part of our rules and regulations. It didn't mean that you couldn't get a ticket for speeding, and a very high, a very expensive ticket. But that is just one very little example of how we get out of control without measure, without some level of discretion. And we are all adults. The same level of measure and discretion that we teach young people and young adults and children and that sort of thing, it's the same thing we have to practice. Point is this. The third aspect of this thing, which is with regard to housing, is that private sector should be regulated by very strict town and country planning measures. One, they should be regulated by a system that ensures that if you're building, and when this man, in 2010 to 15, when Dr. Tiwari was Minister of Planning and Sustainable Development, he made there was a bill, an act, if I'm not mistaken, that was passed by that administration that prohibited building after a certain amount of meters. I think it was, you couldn't cross 600 meters or something like that. But there's regulation there. Also ensuring that town and country planning has the robustness, the personnel, and the resources to ensure that they themselves are also efficient and they are also effective in the execution of their duties as it pertains to ensuring that strict compliance by private housing development are met, so that when we ask ourselves, oh my God, why is Maraval flooding? Why is there all this brown water? We don't realize that somewhere up there, somebody is either executing one, illegal quarrying, or two, a housing development, and they have not built some level of infrastructure that captures surface runoff, especially when it comes to rain and that sort of thing. That's one. Two, public housing, government housing, it's one thing. But here's what's the other part of it. If we use up all the land, that's an arable land for agriculture, for housing, which is something that this UNC government chastised the PNM for, then it is disingenuous and hypocritical for the same UNC government to come back now and use the same arable land for housing. And therefore, that has to change. So we must be able to understand as well that affordable housing, how is New York City and Toronto and Chicago and you name these cities in the world, how are they flourishing? They're flourishing because they're making use of land by going upwards. No, somebody will come and say, well, what about earthquakes? Because we are in a, our seismic activity in Trinidad and Tobago and in the region is very high. Agreed. But we have advanced technologies, advanced engineering that should be able to sustain and, deal with that aspect of it. So go up. Going up doesn't mean that you're poor. Going up in high-rise residential spaces, it's very nice. It's very good, and it works. It can work because it can realize home ownership, the dream of home ownership, but also allow for persons to have the ability within that home ownership to expand their home in terms of having kids and whatnot. So that's one aspect of it, right? And that system of one of the things that needs to be revamped most definitely in this, I think by this administration, critically, is how homes are allocated through the HDC. This lottery thing, this VAPS thing, it's nonsense now. And therefore, it's very, very, very archaic, very, very, very old. We need to define a new way of how we deal with that. And then the last aspect of it is to enter into public-private partnerships for the building of homes and the achievement of providing affordable housing and affordable homes for all of Trinidad and Tobago, because let's be real, we have an aging population, we have a growing population of young people, young professionals, and they want to be able to own homes.
Yeah.
You don't want people that having the dream of purchasing a house, but when you purchase a house, you can't enjoy a vacation. You have to limit the amount of vacations you go on per year, because you're tied and chained and bolted down by an extenuating and excruciating mortgage. So that is also part of our diversification. That is also part of our economics. That should be addressed in terms of affordability and ensuring that how do we, within the next 5 years as a nation, and how does the government, having received the mandate with a constitutional majority in the next 5 years, change the direction of Trinidad and Tobago, utilizing our economic resources, what we have in hand, but also looking for other ways and other options to grow the economy and develop it. And don't tell me that it cannot be done, because Dr. Irfan Ali, President of Ghana, only recently got re-elected for a second term. And so therefore, and then if somebody's going to come and tell me, well, look at the amount of wealth they have. They were in a period of massive growth and development because of the amount of revenues and wealth that they discovered. Yes, luck may have been on his side, fate may have been on his side, but we are not Trinidad. And as I always say, in a conversation with the British High Commission a couple months ago, when asked what were our greatest strengths, what is one of the greatest strengths that the new Prime Minister has coming out of the election, and what is one of the greatest strengths for Trinidad and Tobago? And I simply say, we are not a Duncy people. We are a group of bright people. It is ingrained in us culturally, historically, to achieve higher education. That achievement, that cultural ingraining of having that drive for life, has to also be matched by the system that we live in and the governance that we abide by. And therefore, the responsibility is not an easy one. But I don't believe that the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, the mandate that she has received, and then the question that someone might come and ask, well, why am I focusing only on the Prime Minister and the government? Because this is a conversation that touches and concerns the budget.
Yeah.
And therefore, while I recognize there's a responsibility by the private sector to Trinidad and Tobago, right, which is something I will come to in a bit. I do believe that if there's also enough economic minds available to the government of Trinidad and Tobago who can provide human service in building out frameworks and structures that can be effected in the short, medium, and long term, meaning in the next year, 3 years to 5 years, that will position Trinidad and Tobago in a better space long term. On the flip side of that, I do believe, however, that for far too long, and this is a statement that it also angered, because I disagree 100%. Dr. Rowley, as Prime Minister, indicated that he didn't have the authority or the jurisdiction to regulate or to dictate. And I'm not saying that he should have dictated, but I'm saying that he should have engaged more and convinced more and regulated more the private sector, so that and to hold the private sector accountable, to ensure that there was a level of giving back to the society through an ESG program, through a CSR program, initiative that allowed for there to be greater partnership between the public sector and the private sector in delivering the dreams and aspirations to Trinidad and Tobago. And that we did not only just have one grouping of one sector of persons walking around with their nose up in the air, behaving as if they're better than everybody, driving the best cars, living their best life, living in the best houses, and others are struggling. There's also a serious social disequilibrium that is existing in Trinidad and Tobago, and that is something that also has to be fixed from a structural perspective, in terms of how we go forward, what we do with what we have, but also how do we do it innovatively to ensure long-term sustainability.
One of the things I wanted to get your take on, and we do have to end, but I want to get your take on this. One of the things I saw Mr. Dukran said is that we have policies, or there are policies that collide instead of synchronize. And when I thought of that, I'm like, okay, well, he's probably speaking about our lack of equilibrium in the economy, and then I guess how government will align themselves when creating policies, or so then how would you, what is your take on that in terms of getting us back, or to restore that equilibrium in the economy, I guess leading up to the budget, because that's where we're going to start to see a lot of things coming out. And
the thing about it is,
and then policies is also something that based on what you said, the policies, we need more policies, or we need better policies in place to be able to diversify, to restore all these different aspects of the economy, to increase standard of living, to, so yeah.
So it has to do with, so that's all part of the structural of this equilibrium that he's talking about.
Yeah.
And we're talking about policies. So we need the diversification is a policy, right? And a policy on diversification, I'm sure there is one lying down somewhere collecting dust in somebody's drawer, in some ministry, right? And sometimes so here's another thing that we are very famous for. Let's use me. I might be talking, or may I have created, or I may have written a document that is innovative and that allows for a policy to be generated from what I have put forward based on my research and my findings. Let's just say about sugar. Let's just use my advocacy for sugar. And it's not just for sugar, rice, coffee, cocoa, coconut, right? And I believe that this is something that, I'm not telling the government that this is something that government should get involved in, but I'm saying that this is something that the private sector can invest in, and there should be foreign direct investment, not even local, foreign direct investment into the sector, because there are countries like the Philippines, all of the Asian nations, the Philippines, Bangladesh, India, those nations are thriving on agriculture, on the agrarian society, in the agrarian economy, right? I was reading and I was looking at a video where, because Bangladesh sits at the bottom of the Bay of Bengal, and it's lower land, it's prone to flooding. And that prone to flooding destroys its crops and its agriculture perennially, and therefore, as such, they have developed systems where they've created floating gardens on the rivers and on the beds of the where they plant. They've created floating gardens and they used organic material. They actually use organic material that they billet and they weave it and they rope it together, and they plant on top of that, so that when the waters rise, that also rises, and there's no destruction of crops. And at the same time, what they've planted on is providing a level of nutrients. Now, these are what we will call unskilled or semi-skilled persons that have invented a mechanism to survive. Now, we have to also take into consideration that societies where they are prone to disease and prone to harsh weather conditions and all of that, they have adapted and adopted mechanisms that represents survival of the fittest, right? We also must embrace the survival of the fittest perspective. So coming back to my point though, is that because Shane Mohammed has written a document that provides really good recommendations on how we should go about embracing or re-embracing, I should say, sugar, cocoa, coffee, coconut, and rice. There's somebody sitting in the government or in a political party that did not like or does not like what I say. But what I say is not aimed at offending, it is aimed at enriching. It is aimed at enlightening. It is aimed to do exactly what we're doing, which is sharing of ideas and speaking in the greater interest of Trinidad and Tobago. But somebody's going to be, or persons are going to say, well, he bad talk us for so and so long. What he say doesn't matter. It's not about personalities here. We don't need to like each other. We could respect each other. We could respect each other to the point where what my research from on a sector or my perspective on a sector is valuable to the national growth and development. And if I take it, so let's just take, for example, a Winston Dukaran, Professor Roger Hussein, Amala Dukaran, Indira Sajuan, the list goes on. If we take something that they are recommending, we may not necessarily like them. They didn't even ask for them to be liked. It's a matter of, I'm giving you a document, and if you take it and you implement it, and you say this is a paper that was written by Winston Dukaran, but let's just say person X or Y, not focusing on a UNC government, let's focus on a PNM government, IMBERT, something that IMBERT implemented. 10 years, 20 years down, as a result of the success of what was implemented, you get credited that it was a paper that was written by Winston Dukaran. Mr. Imbert saw the value in what was written and the practicality of it, the feasibility of it, and he implemented it, and we have had X or Y successes as a result of it. That's simply it. It is a matter of us appreciating the work and the resources and the human capital that exists right in front of us. And I would say it is in the best interest of this government that is built on resetting the systems, redirecting the country, repositioning our economics, finding innovative ways in which we do things, breaking down old frameworks and restructuring it for long-term purposing and repurposing and recognizing and realizing the long-term dreams of the society, embracing both the vulnerable and the non-vulnerable. It is in their best interest to seek out the best ideas, putting aside the personalities, and just working together for the greater good of the nation. That's the only way policies do get driven. But there are several policies that face the disequilibrium because it is written by Shane Mohammed, it is written by Roger Hussein, it's written by Mala Dukaran. I mean, it might be by Marlene Atz. The point is, though, regardless of who it was written by, it's out there, and it is something that can work for the greater good of the nation and achieve the long-term goals or even the short-term goals or the medium-term wins for a government. Take it and run with it and put aside the differences of the personalities.
And another thing, this morning I saw there was some reshuffling in cabinet's responsibilities and duties. Do you think that speaks to something bigger leading up to the budget? I mean, the timing of it seems...
I don't think it's a matter of directly involved or directly linked to the budget. What I see it is a new system of accountability. And it is also in alignment. I always say in the last, 5 months, we're almost in, today's the 6th. So in 22 days, 3 weeks, the government will reach its 6-month mark. And it is an indication that the Prime Minister remains consistent in what she has said from the day she won the election to the day she swore in her government, and then to the 100 days in office, where she continued to be committed to the cause and committed to the mandate of creating a system of good governance. And you cannot tell a nation and break down CPEP and break down URP and implement a state of emergency because you realize that you are shaking systematic and institutional ills that have long expired its original moorings. That there's going to be the persons that are upset and where there's evidence to show there's illegality in there, you're going to have to act decisively. So that is one part of the government's mission, the government thrust. The second part of it is this. I'm not surprised. In fact, I'm really happy that it has happened. Why? Because this is a soft approach to accountability and keeping persons in check. This is a soft approach of the Prime Minister observing the cabinet ministers, understanding that if not 90% of them were brand new, recognizing that, you know what? Yes, I appointed you as Minister X or Y with this under your schedule of responsibilities and duties. But after 6 months, you didn't show a level of interest. One, you didn't show a capacity to understand what you were supposed to do with it. You didn't get a grasp of what your duties and responsibilities were. You probably didn't ask. You probably didn't report. You probably didn't come to me directly and say. But this is where a Prime Minister is leading by understanding and by observing and by asking certain questions and getting feedback and realizing, you know what? While the iron is still hot and we're brand new, let me do some realigning. Let me do some reshuffle. Well, it's not a reshuffle, it's a realignment of responsibilities and scheduling, right? Because nobody got moved around. The only thing that was created was a Ministry of Land, was a Ministry of Land and Legal Affairs. And kudos to that minister for getting an additional portfolio, which says, therefore, that minister understood what his mandate was and may have been in constant conversation with Prime Minister so that even if he had questions or doubts or concerns, it could be streamlined, right?
Yes.
One of the critical aspects of it is that for ministers need to communicate with the boss lady, and I'm using colloquial language now, and indicate what is what, and if that didn't happen, she would have been observing or asking questions. And sometimes the best leaders observes or asks a question and takes notice of persons' responses and their actions or inactions, and then they know what to do. So this realignment that I see is a very soft approach and a very soft indicator to the cabinet of Trinidad and Tobago that there are key deliverables that needs to be delivered. And if persons are having difficulties in delivering on the mandate that I have set, because we don't know what the future holds, right? And I did say from the onset, during the election, I did say that the Mrs. Prasad Bissessa is on a threshold of deciding what her legacy would be. And understanding that, she therefore needs to take very harsh decisions as it pertains to governance across the board, within the cabinet, in the structures and frameworks of governance outside of the cabinet that they are responsible for. I see the PNM is beating their chest and getting excited and be like, no. This is accountability and transparency. This is taking responsibility. This is a way of sending a very clear message that the road to getting to government was a very difficult one. And now that we've gotten into government, or in fact, now that she has become Prime Minister, any level of foolishness would not be tolerated. Any level of incompetence would be dealt with very, very, very quickly. This is not a budget thing.
Most of based on what I read in terms of this reshuffling, I agreed with, and I found most of it made sense, if not all. It made a lot of sense, And
that's the thing. We need to, if we want to get true and real results, and we want to stay true to ourselves in terms of what we want for our country and where we are going with regard to the direction of governance, there are things that are going to have to be shifted. And if it's not working and you see, one of our greatest flaws, and I told this to a group of my students in a class the other night, I said, one of the things that has kept us back from growth and development and from progress and from competitive advantage and all the fancy business language words is that this is how we have done it for the last 30 years. or this is what we've been done, this is how we do things here, and not realizing that that is the two most dangerous statements for an organization and for us, for a business, for an entrepreneur and an entrepreneurial plan. That when you say that, you're indicating that you're shutting down any sort of innovation, any sort of creativity, anything that talks and seeks outside the box, and you're also shutting people down. And therefore, we cannot continue doing things the same way and expect different results. If we want to get different results, we have to accept the change that the change that comes with that, and the discomfort that comes with that. So, if Mrs. Prasad-Bissessar and the government, if Mrs. Prasad-Bissessar, in her wisdom, in her experience, taking the words out of the mouth of a PNM supporter on election night as a veteran of the politics, if she wants to craft a very defining and strong legacy for herself, whilst at the same time crafting a legacy that says that in her second opportunity as Prime Minister, she made critical, difficult, and important decisions that shifted and repositioned Trinidad and Tobago on the pathway of prosperity, growth, and development, then so be it. I always refer to Prime Minister Tony Blair, who in 1997 indicated that the success of his Labour government was also hinged on the very difficult and unpopular decisions of former Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher, and that the value and the credit and the work and the adjustments and the harsh decisions that Prime Minister Thatcher paid the ultimate political price for was also the conduit to a Britain today that remained economically robust and resilient. Yeah. And that was a Labour Prime Minister talking about the Conservative Prime Minister that would have left 10 years before him. So we have to understand that if we were to do things, if we as individuals recognize errors, we recognize mistakes, we recognize disequilibriums within our life, and we don't take the opportunities, and in recognizing it, don't take the steps to change it, then what is going to happen? If our life is toxic because of toxic friends or persons that pull us down or just suck the goodness out of us and return to us negativity and negative energy, then what are we going to? What does that do for us? It doesn't move us progressively. Sometimes you have to shed the old, take up a new coat in order to go into a new direction. That's where we're going.
Yeah. So, I mean, leading up to budget, I would assume we're all excited and just anticipating.
Well, I will say this. I expect a level of, as best as possible, with the resources that Trinidad and Tobago currently has, some level of goodness.
Yeah.
But I also, I won't have high expectation in terms of, we can't wave a magic wand and suddenly get prosperity and that. So I think this is going to be a budget that is a stepping stone towards
first step,
success and resilience. So, the aim is to come to a balanced budget and then come to a budget that is, not deficit.
Yeah, that's something that could put us in a better place next year.
Position, yes.
And,
yes, that's what I look forward to. So if there are persons who are going to, and I expect that there would be a lot of noise, but I don't expect that there will be deficit budgeting, but I do look forward as quick as possible that we could put the systems in place and the frameworks and the policies in place and activate them quickly enough so that in a year from now, at the 2026 budget, 2026-27 budget, we will be closing the gaps and realizing a larger level of active diversification of our economy, as well as growth within our energy sectors and other sectors that exist.
Yes, and again, something that you mentioned earlier, and that you were referring to earlier, to get away from that Dutch
disease.
I myself learned something new this morning, so thank you for that. Shane, thank you so much for joining me on the program. We went way over time. We have Sean Michael Small coming up on the hour of 8 o'clock with Talking Points, so we do have to end it now.
No problem. We'll talk again.
Yes, definitely. Enjoy the rest of your day, and thanks again.
You too. Take care.
Bye-bye. All right, so that brings us to the end of AM Prime this morning. I will leave you with this. Monday is for people with a mission. So go out there and enjoy your Monday, do something good. And I will see you back here again tomorrow morning. Bye-bye.
WESN.
Remember waking up early just to catch your favorite cartoons? WESN brings back those magical mornings with Retro Saturdays.
Thus, the Powerpuff Girls were born!
Where the young at heart relive the fun. Join us every Saturday from 8 a.m. to 12 noon, only on WESN, the content capital.
Every day, we communicate through stories. Stories of ourselves, our challenges, our goals, our experiences, and our aspirations. Story